Welcome back to the Shipyard. Today, we have something that, we haven't been able to do in a while. Steven Van Deventer dropped, a Facebook post and said, hey, let's talk about the Klingon faction pack. And people started asking questions, and he started giving answers. Some of them a little roundabout, some of them very direct. In fact, we have 11 out of the 28 cards named. No specifics on text or cost, but when you get um, about 40% of a pack named, that's pretty good. And if you consider generic ships, now we're at 15 of 28, and that's above 50%. Yeah, I have a math degree. So I said, hey, Jerry, Jerry Brown from the Antari Shipyard, we've been messaging back and forth about these. Why don't you come on and let's do a video about this stuff? Because there's a lot of cool things to talk about here. So Jerry, welcome, and let's just start with ships. We've got some ships that I'm calling like the deep hits, the deep cuts of Klingon ships. The IKS Devul, the IKS
Yep.
Katanko, the IKS Taag, and the IKS Kaskari. That's a Negvar, two Katingas, and a Brel.
Yep.
Um, I have watched every episode of Star Trek, and if you put a phaser to my head, I could not tell you where any of those named ships come from.
Yep. I definitely had to do some digging in the Alpha canon to figure out some of this stuff. Um,
Yeah, I know that there's a slight connection to Claw from Final Frontier. Star Trek Five, that movie that if you actually think about it as maybe Kirk's Nexus dream makes a whole lot more sense than anything that actually happened. Um, it's a fun movie. My wife enjoys that movie. And her enjoyment allowed me to appreciate the movie in a different light, and I still admit it is better than the motion picture. But
Certainly, it's
perhaps
not
those are
it's not as
fighting
strong
words.
as some of the others, but
It is not as strong as some of the others. We can agree on that.
but
But
yeah. The name of the Borel itself, the Koskari, that's actually a very vague Voyager reference,
mm,
um, going back to the episode where B'Elanna Torres was on the barge of the dead, and she saw her mother.
okay.
The Koskari they're named as the serpents that are in the blood water that are eating whatever warrior jumped off the side of the barge.
Oh,
So
interesting. That
it's
might
an interesting
give.
reference right there.
Okay, so that kind of ties into the talent a death worthy of Stovacor. Maybe,
Possibly, yeah. That's a good point.
but we're jumping ahead. But that was at least a reference worth making. Perhaps. Um, who knows? Maybe we end up with a talent barge of the dead. Um,
It's possible.
it is
Anything's
possible.
possible at this point.
It really is. Yeah, the other side of it is
The
we've seen Negvars,
mhm.
but they weren't named.
Yeah, nothing named past the named Negvar from Way of the Warrior and Deep Space Nine. Um, and of course, Regent's flagship, but again, that's, as you would put it, that's a vanity ship. No
Exactly.
name.
And you just kind of sit there and you go, I mean, I'm sure they have names because every ship has a name, but
Yep.
to us
That
mere mortals.
that name that they gave the Negvar, either it's a really deep cut and I haven't been able to find it yet, but I have not found anything in Alpha Canon that ties that name to anything at this point. That's not saying that there isn't something out there. That's just saying in my quick Google search of Alpha Memory or Memory Alpha, I can't find anything in there.
It almost sounds like, well, it looks like the devil,
Right?
which has some interesting bits. And I know that we had, okay, I'm perhaps stretching here, but isn't the Klingon like devil Feckler? And then in All Good Things, one of the ships that attacked the Pasteur was the IKS Feckler.
Mm.
I don't know. That's a stretch, but I know that that class was also like was viewed as a Negvar class,
Yeah.
retconned, even
Yeah.
though it was like a
A
Voudier.
Negvar before it was a Negvar. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know. I'm not putting that out there. I mean, I'm putting that out there, even though Steven specifically said this pack is inspired by uh, motion pictures, original series, and DS9. So
Yep.
maybe I'm overthinking, but this whole episode is about overthinking. Uh, that's kind of what we're doing here. So
Yeah.
for
That's
captains,
half the fun of it right there.
yeah, we also got a ton of information that this is all kind of centered around the Dahar Masters, Kor Koloth Kang, um, and Blood Oath, the episode Blood Oath, which leads us to go, okay, we're getting a young Kang.
Yes. Have to.
We have to. He's the only young one missing, and by young I mean TOS version of him. Uh, Now, what I've done is I've put DS9 Kor Koloth Kang as crew because they really weren't captains at that point. They were crew. Now, I think they could very easily be flip cards. I think they could be new specialization cards where they'll be crew on one side and also have a captain side.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm down for that. I think that gives them a lot of intrigue. But
Now, a case can be made that Kang, old DS9 Kang, could be another captain that we get because in the episode they use his ship to go to the planet where the albino is.
yeah,
So there is a case, but I would prefer not to see two Captain Kings unless it's a flip.
yeah. So
I mean, it seems like that'd be I don't know. I'd prefer to have four different captains unless we're gonna have a young king and an old king flip card type deal.
yeah, that would be a weird. That would be a flip captain to two totally different abilities. That could be really interesting.
Right. I mean, they don't even technically have to flip. They could just be mirror copies. You know,
Yeah, right. You
kind of
could
like a
just
Captain Admiral thing.
yeah. Um, so based on our deductions, we're also reasonably certain that Claw from Star Trek Five um, is a captain. It just
Yeah,
makes
I think we could take a very good educated guess on that one, just based on the time periods that Stephen had given us, and the question that I posted about which particular movie, or could it have been one of these movies. And I mean, if you go back and you look at just the TMP movies, um, Claus Burrell is the only one that's missing. So why would they give us a Burrell and then, with all intents and purposes, give it an actual name, which I like, versus Claus, Bird of Prey,
yeah, and Stephen actually
um,
mentioned
and not
that
give us Claw.
yeah, Stephen mentioned that some of these ships were getting names rather than just calling them, whoever's ship.
Yes.
which I'm down for
Which
because like
I personally I like that. That's much better.
it makes sense with Ferengi. Ferengi are very vain. Ferengi will name stuff after themselves.
Yeah.
Klingons, not so much. I'm going to go on a limb. I think the albino is another captain.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Just because,
I mean, the main protagonist of the episode.
yeah,
He's got to be represented somehow.
and and he makes too much sense not to be a captain. Plus, tossing in an independent captain is a whole lot of fun. They did it with Khan on the Reliant Pack. Even
Yep.
though Khan was not a Federation captain, they put him on a Federation ship.
Yep.
So, as for the fourth captain, I mean, you tossed out it could be Old Kang, it could be any of these guys. Um, it could also be Worf.
It could be worse.
Um, but yeah, who knows?
I mean, we could talk about who we know it's not going to be,
Yeah,
because that was
I
a
was
question that was answered.
amazed that I threw out that many names and I got a denial. I threw out what did I throw out? Martok, Gowron, Kern.
I think you said Duras.
Duras, Lursa, Bator. Yeah. Basically every Klingon captain that didn't relate to this episode or this episode arc that had
Right.
at least two versions. And I'm like, okay, I'll take that.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it could be Worf. I really hope it's not Worf, just based on how many Worfs are in the game.
No,
I mean,
I'm still
I know
waiting
he's
for that
popular,
Fed
but
Captain Worf. That's who I hope, and I hope he's on the in the Federation faction pack.
yeah.
He makes too much sense as a Defiant captain, but we'll talk about that once we get Federation faction pack spoilers. I couldn't begin
I
to
mean,
guess at a talent.
going back to Worf real quick.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, we could make an argument that we could get a Federation Captain Worf out of this if we're sticking with the DS9 time period. Because there is one more episode with Core that was in it,
oh yeah,
and that was the Sword of Kahless
it
episode.
is. Ah,
I, he didn't. I don't think he took the Defiant out in that episode, but again, loose ties. It's possible.
you know what? I'm gonna put that in as our other talent, Sword of Kahless.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess that that's a talent. By the way, I don't know that we're getting 3 talents. We could get 5 talents. We could get only the 2 named talents. We do know for sure that we're getting a death worthy of Stovacor and Dahar Master. By the
Yes.
way, I fully expect Dahar Master to be Klingon ship locked if Kang, Kor, and Koloth are all captains. I could see them being Klingon captain locked, but if not, I definitely expect it to say this talent may only be equipped to those 3 names.
Ooh, that'd be interesting to get them as crew with an elite talent slot, like
That's where
Garrick.
or they will say they'll have special texts that say may equip Dahar Master elite talent.
Oh, I like that better.
Where so
Rather
they
than
can't
just leaving
equip
an open
anything, but
talent.
they can equip those or
Yeah.
that. Ooh, other thought, we could get 3 copies of Dahar Master.
That is true.
That could be interesting. Who knows what it does? That's what I'm really interesting to find out.
Oh, do you know that there again? There's a case that could be made for that because in the animated faction pack, we got those double copies of the weapons,
Yes.
and I remember this in particular because I helped Chris Peters with putting those into Utopia, and we knew how many cards were in the pack, but the weapons were all numbered the same.
Oh, yeah.
So when we went through them, we knew we were missing one, but that's because I think Disruptor Blast had the same number.
Yeah.
So it's possible that Tahar Master we could be getting multiple copies of.
Yeah. Um,
Interesting.
I mean, thought and dream and pretty much I know that at some point someone who designs cards will listen to this, and that's a thought in the future. If you haven't done it already, you could do it in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
My thoughts are free. My design consultation is free. I'm just a fan talking.
Absolutely. I mean,
Um, we
I'm not.
do
I'm
all
not
this
looking for
because
anything.
it's
I
fun.
love playing the game. Give me more game.
Exactly. Weapons. Who knows what the weapons are in this pack? We know
Uh,
concussive charges. I mean, I'd bank on getting 2 of those. Beyond that, I have no idea.
yeah, and it's interesting that he mentioned that it's going to get. Or I don't think he mentioned it directly, but it was in the question. So concussive charges, it's getting reworded, and
Yeah,
it's probably going to be discounted. I would assume.
I would think so. As for crew, let's assume we get Core Koloth Kang. I'm going to say some Star Trek 5 Klingon.
Uh, Vixus.
Vixis. Okay, I'm down for Vixis. Um, you have another Star Trek 5 Klingon of note?
No.
No?
Other outside of Cord, no.
Right. Okay, that
But
brings us to Cord. So,
there is one more.
oh,
We have done a lot of talking about TMP and DS9, but not so much of TOS.
right, right.
Now,
Isn't there a it's the female Klingon that is with I want to say Core in like the Babylon episode?
yeah, and I did look at that.
Not that I could name
It's
her.
an Errand of Mercy.
Okay.
It's the one where they're on Organia,
Okay, yeah.
and he's the Core's the governor. And his is a very generic name. It's like Lieutenant. That's all he's credited as on
Sure.
the Alpha memory or memory Alpha. But going looking at the episodes that those three were in for the original series, there is one crew or one person that is missing of note, and that was Arn Darvin
Ah, yeah.
from Trouble with Tribbles, the
So,
Klingon spy, the one that looks human. And even then, that also ties back into what Steven said because he shows up in DS9.
yeah.
So he's
In
in two of the time periods that were listed specifically.
in tribbles and or trials and
Trials and tribulations.
yeah, tribulations. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a mouth. That's a tongue twister.
yeah. So
I could see Darwin. Now I'm almost
I think
disappointed
he's
if he
going
doesn't show up.
to be. Now, if that means anything to do with tribbles, I think the tribbles we have are the tribbles we have.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really anything else you can do with a tribble at this point.
No, just have another way of dealing with tribbles. I
Yeah.
I kind of would like a tribble adjunct pack. Get the DS9 crew from the Trials episode. That would be fun.
Yeah.
But here's the big one. So Steven mentioned a new mechanic that's coming, and it's in the upcoming expansion packs, but not the Cardassian pack. So that means Federation, Vulcan, and Klingon.
Yes.
And I got to thinking. I said, what do those factions have in common? There's a few things, but once you say, well, what don't Klingons do? And I said, or sorry, what don't Cardassians do? What do Klingons do? It's ambassadors. Cardassia doesn't have an ambassador represented in the show. I'm sure they have ambassadors somewhere, um, right? Any major planetary power, military operation would, but they just don't in the show. You don't see the Cardassian ambassador to Earth or to Romulus or anything like that. But Cord was the Klingon ambassador to that godforsaken planet in Star Trek V.
Yep.
And we have Federation ambassadors all over the place. And we have Vulcan ambassadors to Earth in the Enterprise era. And it makes sense. So I'm calling it here that Cord is an ambassador, and that gives us a new mechanic in this game. What ambassadors do, I have no notion. Well, okay, I have some notions. Way back, I think I have a 2017, maybe even 2016 date on a political leader's idea from the Star Trek Titan Destiny books, but my ideas were bad. I mean, I'll point blank admit my ideas were bad. But it was basically that you would equip one ambassador to your fleet. They would benefit your fleet in some way, or maybe only ships of a particular faction, or they would benefit two different factions type thing. Depends on how they're an ambassador. We'll see. Maybe they give some kind of a discount.
Yep.
Maybe
And I like the idea of bringing an ambassador into the game. I mean, he flat out said there's a new mechanic, and you're right. Everything but the Cardassian faction pack, and
yeah,
we've seen Klingon ambassadors on screen, 2 of them, I believe, that I can remember. Well, I guess Worf technically counts as a third one.
Oh yeah. Old Worf.
We've seen Romulan ambassadors, we've seen Vulcan and Old Worf, and then there was Worf at the end of DS9 that left.
Yeah, although then he shows up in Nemesis like 6 months later. But that's besides the point.
Yeah, and they could be, like you said, they could be a fleet-wide action or a fleet-wide thing where the fleet can benefit from it, or maybe specific factions that encourage you to build with, 2 factions.
Yeah. Almost like a treaty of sorts.
Yeah.
In a way, I've been looking through my old Star Trek card game stuff, and in that you had to play basically faction pure. The factions were very large, but there were treaties that let you, or not faction pure, more like ship pure. But there were treaties that let you put, say, Klingon crew on a Romulan ship, or vice versa. But you needed a treaty in play to make that happen. And maybe ambassadors do something like that, and maybe this is the game starting to tilt towards some kind of faction purity, not full-on purity, but at least a little more ship pure. I don't know. The new stuff that's come out just feels like it's easier to play that way. You don't need quite as much mix and match. But again, that's a total different discussion.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make judgments, and I'm somebody that's said for the longest time, play the game to the rules that are writ. House rules are great. Play house rules. But, competitively play the game as it's played. But yeah, so if this is how the faction pack looks, I think it would be a good thing. I'm going to wipe Worf out because we're not reasonably certain about Worf being a captain.
No.
But okay, so we get the ships. We know the ships. A young Kang captain, Claw the albino, a fourth captain. Um, our two talents for sure. A third talent, uh, I'd
Technically,
call myself like 25% certain on Sword of Kalis. I wouldn't put any money on it, but something involving the
it
sword
could
would
either
be
end up as a
interesting.
talent or it could end up being a tech.
It could be a tech. It would be an interesting tech. It would be kind of a weird tech, but it could be a tech.
Hmm.
Um, weapons, I'm not even going to guess. Crew, I like our crew. There could certainly be more crew. Um, I mean, the crew could expand in any number of ways.
Hmm.
And tech, I could have, you know, who knows? Who knows what they want to do with tech? Um, but I'm not willing to bet anything. I'm not a betting person in general. But
No, I
Cord as an
guess.
ambassador just feels like that game mechanic. And I come into this hand on heart with no actual knowledge. I do not have inside sources anymore. I am years removed from actual WizKids contact. Um, I wish I did. I wish I had my sources, but it feels like what's right. It feels like where this game could go.
I like the potential of that. Um, I mean, new mechanic in itself is a very vague term. It could lead to any place really. Um, I mean, obviously we can't cover everything, but I really like the ambassador idea, and I would almost say I'm right with you on that. It seems right. It feels right. It feels like ambassadors can maybe take the role of something that we've lost,
Yeah,
but I guess technically that wouldn't be a new mechanic where it would fill the void of OP resources that we don't have any legal ones of anymore.
right.
Um, but who knows? It can go anywhere.
It could. So,
Um,
um,
one thing I am disappointed in, and I think you are too, no Dax.
I'm disappointed in no Dax. I'm disappointed that we're not getting an Admiral. I understand the Admiral. I don't understand the Dax. Dax was so critical to the Blood Oath episode.
Yeah,
She
whether it be Jadzia or Curzon. I
exactly.
mean, and right there, that could have been a flip crew. That would have been different.
That would have been fantastic. And Steven said we ended up not being able to make her, but we used her ability on someone else. That
Huh.
that I don't understand because I from everything I know about Star Trek licensing, which I'm not a lawyer, but I dabble in understanding where the current state of Star Trek licensing is. Um, Terry Farrell has no issues with her image being used in Star Trek product at this point. And she didn't have any issue with her image being used in the finale of DS9. It's just the approval got to her agent and then to her too late to get it back for production.
Okay.
Is everything that I understand, and she was in Ira Stephen Bear's documentary about DS9.
Yep.
So, um, I don't think there's bad blood between her and Star Trek as a franchise. But who knows? You know what? Maybe the new mechanic isn't ambassadors. Maybe it's dual crew, two or dual persona, two people on the same card.
Oh,
where you equip one card, but you have a bar, so you can do one ability or the other, but you're only taking up a single slot.
i- interesting. So it's like a physical representation of the Lursa Beitor flip card.
Exactly. And the I mean, again, this is from the CCG, but they did that with Jake and Nog, Data and Geordi, Data and Picard when they were Romulans. They did it with Beverly and Picard when they were escaping from confinement.
Oh yeah, when they were linked,
Yeah, when they had the
when
mental
they're
link.
mind linked. Yeah.
And then they did it with Loxana and Deanna when they were Ferengi captives.
Hmm.
And probably something else. I'm not the well versed CCG expert, but there were some dual crew, and they added a little spice. None of them were particularly great, but I mean that could easily be something they do. Um, they I don't know that dual would make sense here, but because of the trio nature of the K's, Kor Koloth Kang, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll revisit this as we get more info and spoilers that should happen someday. Um,
Someday.
but I'll say this: Steven got permission from the attack wing product lead at WizKids to do this. He did not act on his own. For him to get that permission, A, is huge because this is the first time something like this has ever happened.
Yeah.
And then, furthermore, he wouldn't have done this if this product wasn't basically ready to go. I think everything is just kind of waiting on Alliance, and that if this is happening now, I believe it points to every intention of this product being released as soon as it can be, and that is probably within a couple of months of Alliance being released. So I would say that if the November date of Alliance holds up, and yes, I'm aware that's a gigantic if,
Yep.
then this product is probably seen in December or January, February at the latest. And I'm not one to talk, I mean, those are my dates. Those are explicitly not Steven's dates because Steven did not talk time
You know,
frame at all.
I will add on to that, and it's something that happens. We play here in Grand Rapids. We played in OP at our local game store last Sunday. I want to say it was. But one of our guys, he went and asked the game store owner. He originally went and asked him about Alliance to see if he can pre-order it. And the game store owner told us that for the first time he's seen it since he's been watching, um, the Klingon faction pack was up for pre-order.
Okay.
So, and I didn't think of that till just now when you were talking about that. Um, so it definitely does seem like it is coming. It's being loaded into the torpedo tube as to speak.
You know what? I'm going to check something,
Um,
and I'm going to check something on camera. Um, this is perhaps dangerous to do, but at least it doesn't show my password. Yes, I still have
um,
access uh, to a store solicit account.
nice.
No, I can't order anything, but I at least have this in mind. Okay,
I
so
mean, you have
right
view
now,
access.
Grain of Salt, Cardassian, Vulcan, Klingon, and Fed all say December 2020. No date. So until there's an explicit date, I say everything can change.
Right. Yeah.
which is, I mean, that's totally fine. And let's look and see if Alliance has anything. Alliance. If we go look at Alliance has a November 2020 date, which again is fine. That is the most up to date I have seen it. And I've actually seen everything at least ahead right now. So that to me is encouraging that at least those are updated. Although now I kind of want to look and see if go back to Attack Wing and see if the OP kits are still around, because those were a mark of something. They were kind of the mark saying, yeah, nothing's actually moving anytime soon. And I think, okay, those ones have released. Those ones. Maybe just filter by OP kit. No. Okay, it looks like those OP kits have disappeared. No, they could have just hidden them because they don't actually have a date for them.
Yes.
And they don't want stores ordering stuff, but which would make sense. But I think it's at least safe to say we weren't seeing OPs, and given the state of the world, it might be a good idea. But I'm not going to get political.
No, it's no.
I think a company probably shouldn't be promoting that. But anywho, this is the state of the Klingon faction pack, mostly as we understand it, but also with some hints, some educated guesses, and hopefully you found this at least somewhat educational, interesting. Educational might be a bit of a stretch.
Well, maybe for some. But I definitely want to say, huge shout out to Steven for doing this. Like you said earlier, it's amazing to finally hear something from somebody that's associated. It doesn't matter how associated they are or anything. I'm glad to see something, and I hope that WizKids takes notice and that they continue doing this with the other faction packs, because this has been a lot of fun for me today to sit down and actually look at what Steven's saying and what he's not saying and thinking about what's coming. It's encouraging, and I hope we get more of this.
Well, if the point was to grow community engagement and do it in a positive way, I think it's succeeded. Because nobody's yelling at each other over this stuff. Even my concerns about, are these packs being designed with what Alliance has to offer in mind? You know what? If they're not, and something from Alliance causes problems, you just easily say, you can't run Alliance cards in Nationals and Worlds. It's an easy fix.
Yep.
I know WizKids has not wanted to ban anything, but I mean, they did. They did with the warp jump like effects. But it's an easy enough blanket to throw over it to just say, hey, those cards are great. And if you all want to figure them out for your organized play events, that's fine. But as far as worlds go,
And
we're not going
my
to mess
best
with them.
guess, my best guess with that is that's why the logo is on the cards in the bottom right hand corner, I believe.
Yes,
There's a little alliance logo, so you know what an alliance card is.
probably. I mean, and they're meant to be compatible. It's meant where you can bring Alliance into the game. But I know
Yes.
from listening to Josh's live stream, he just said Star Trek Attack Wing's too unruly. I don't. The point costing just isn't consistent enough for me to be able to make good value judgments for what players bring into a campaign. Um, so I wanted to have my own small set of upgrades that I know players are going to get a, a reasonable experience from. Uh, and I'm good with
Yep.
that.
And that's when he showed it to us at Origins 2019 in the actual like physical demo. That's exactly what he said was, the cards that exist in the game they exist already, and this is a new thing. It is Attack Wing, but it's a new thing, and we wanted to create new cards for this thing, and that Picard 9. If you were to bring that OG Picard in from the first starter, it would mess up the campaign. Not a lot, but his ability alone is not tailored to the Alliance experience.
Yeah. To be fair, I might end up bringing in like Type 8 phasers, though. I don't know that that would
Trust
totally
me, there's
break
there's
it.
stuff coming in that pack. Without giving away anything, there's good stuff in the pack.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. But if I find myself really needing that extra attack die boost, I might bring in Type 8s. But we'll see. We'll see. That'll be for another day. All right.
Yep.
I think we have hit the 40-minute mark, and that is probably all that anyone will ever listen to me talk about what isn't in the game yet. But you know what? Y'all haven't been listening to just me, so hopefully that's been good. You know what? For comments, I mean, obviously talk about whatever you want, but talk about what you'd like to see. What? Who else is missing? What else is missing? You know, what kind of weapons? I guess some kind of giant neg negvar torpedo of doom.
Of Doom.
Oh, okay. So there's a reason for that. When I forget what the upgrade was, but it's a card that was like fire boost a torpedo, not a photon torpedo, but a torpedo. Or no, it was boost a photon torpedo, right? And I said, okay, this should work on high yield photon torpedo because that's still a photon torpedo. It's just a specific type of photon torpedo.
Right.
And I argued that it would work on a low yield photon torpedo, it would work on a type 8 photon torpedo, it would work on a toss water on your opponent and rip the card in half photon torpedo as long as it had the name photon torpedo in it.
Hmm.
Because it was a photon
Interesting.
torpedo. So it could be a photon torpedo of doom because that's a photon torpedo. But it would never work on a photonic torpedo because that's not a photon torpedo.
Different naming. Yeah.
Yep. And so that made all the difference. And so that's why that's one of the points where a torpedo of doom came from.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's the fun silly bit. And you know what? That's a good way to end things. This is the problem with being in this game for 5 years and doing like involved rule discussions and heavy thoughts and podcasts for 4 of those 5 years. Maybe it's 3.5. I don't remember when State of the Federation started and when I got in, but um, boy, who would have ever thought I'd still be doing this? Anyway, it's all fun. It's
Hey,
all fun, and I enjoy it. So,
absolutely.
well, now that it's at 45 minutes, I think that's a good time to call it done for the day. Thank you all for watching. Um, that's it for me. Jerry, I'll give you the last word.
Well, you're really prepared for that. Um, thanks for listening. I don't.
All right. Until next time, we'll see you around the shipyard. Take care, guys.